Yeah.
Okay. David, it's really great to have you here. Now, you've obviously living a very successful life, and the whole point of this podcast is to share stories of reinvention, and you have a wonderful story yourself. But before we get into that, what I always love to figure out is, because I never realised my issues until I took a trip back down memory lane to my childhood. So can you take us back to your childhood and, give us an understanding what it was like, share some pivotal moments or experiences that you believed shaped you who you are today?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about this discussion. Um, so you want to go all the way back? Okay. Well, let's do it. Let's do it. So yeah, I grew up in California in the Bay Area. I'm from Oakland. Um, let's see. Yeah, childhood had some challenges, man. There's no doubt about it. I'm from a multicultural family, so my dad's from Iran, and my mother's family's from here in the States. Um, and I grew up. I'm hard of hearing, actually, so that was a big part of my childhood. I'm deaf in one ear, and so school was hard. School was very, yeah, it was hard. It's hard to focus, and I ended up acting out a lot, and it just, I kind of like set the stage for me just to getting in trouble a lot, I think. Um, and always sort of made me feel, yeah, it's just like a little different. Um, we're going to talk throughout this about, about substance use, and I'll just kind of preface it with, my dad struggled with alcoholism in a heavy, major way. And kudos to him. He's been sober for about 25 years now himself. That was a big part of my childhood, was living in that household, with alcoholism at that level and severity was tough. So I got in trouble a lot. I got in trouble, started drinking when I was 12, 13. Had some situations happen where I had to change schools a couple times. But I did manage to get back on the right track in high school and got into a good college. Got into an Ivy League school here on the East Coast. But and things were going okay. I sort of figured some stuff out. I thought things were going good, and I had some plans for what my life was going to look like. And then, sophomore, junior year, so I'm like 20, 21. I started having these mood swings, man. I started wake up one day and just feel like, it wasn't like I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. It was a bigger, much more severe feeling than that. And it was almost like not even the wrong side of bed. It was more like I couldn't get out of the bed. And I felt, for the first time, like, okay, this is something different's going on with me. I'm not really sure what it is. Talking to people, kind of doing simple things was getting really hard. And then, like, in a couple of days, it would go away, and I'd be like on top of the world and feeling excited and talking a mile a minute with everybody. So this started to just kind of go that way for a year or so. These moods going up and down, and when I was feeling sad, it was too much to bear sometimes, and I got really comfortable drinking as a way to just make it kind of feel better. And it would, if I felt depressed, that was a surefire way to kind of get through the night and to kind of right the ship. So I got in that habit of drinking whenever I felt off. But the mood swings got worse and worse, and they started to get to, by the time I graduated college, and I was used to, at this point, just drinking a ton to really help manage how I was feeling. But then the mood swings started to get really bad, and it could be like 2 weeks where I felt like I'll be honest, I remember the first time I thought about whether or not I really might be better off being dead was like I was 21 or 22 years old. And the depression was so severe that for the first time I thought about suicide in like a real way. And I had things going for me, but it actually felt like, no, this might be better off not being here than to feel this sad. But then it could go away. 2 weeks go by, and I feel the opposite end of the spectrum for 2 weeks, and it's like I forgot about all the issues, and I forgot about how I felt, and was on top of the world again. So I was in a dangerous spot, bouncing between these two moods, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know, any language or vocabulary to speak about mental health. It wasn't something I was familiar with. I didn't tell anybody. I just kept it to myself, and started to wonder if maybe I was going crazy or something. But just kept doing it. And drinking was the way that I kept managing and medicating myself.
So this just
So now I'm working. I have a job.
Sorry, David. I was just, the drinking side of it. With my own experience, but you often hear that people say that the drinking is not the problem. The drinking is a solution to a deeper problem, and that's what you're saying was the case for you. You were using the drinking to soothe the pain because you couldn't deal with that, depression, that the feeling of discomfort.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it was fun too. I mean, it's all that stuff, all that normal high school or college age stuff, but it was much different to me. And the way I drank, it wasn't, I wasn't drinking to have a good time. I was drinking to the point of unconsciousness every time. That's how I understood drinking. That's how I interacted with alcohol, was drinking as much as I could to the point of getting unconscious every time, because that was the way to just feel nothing. That was the way to finally go to sleep. So it's a dangerous level of drinking, and I didn't want 6 or 7 beers. I wanted dozens, and I would drink that much. I could drink that much, and built up a tolerance that was pretty crazy. So I'm managing my mental health with alcohol. I'm not talking about it. I'm not having any discussions with anybody that I probably should. And so now I'm working. I've got a job. I'm actually working with at-risk kids. So I'm working at a residential facility with kids. And it's an intense job for sure. But I was able to do it. And part of the reason I was successful at it was because when I could get on that manic level of energy, I didn't need to sleep much. I could go 3 hours a night of sleep for 2 weeks and do really well. And but what was happening on the inside of me is like I was coming undone, and still not talking about the thoughts that were going through my mind. And finally, I just hit a wall. I worked for 2 weeks straight, no days off. I finally got a day off. I was feeling just riding high with all this energy. And I said, okay, I'm going to run out. I'm going to go. I'm going to run 13 miles. I'm going to do a 50-mile bike ride. That was my plan for the day. And I thought in my head, I'm like, okay, that'll finally help me get to sleep if I use up all this energy, And I did, and that wasn't like the kind of activity I normally did. I was in shape, but I didn't do these long things. It was an idea I had. And I finally got back. And for the first time in 2 weeks, my mind quieted down. And I felt like, okay, I'm finally back to baseline, and I can sleep tonight. Then I woke up, man. And, I'd had these bad episodes before, but this was the worst I'd felt in my whole life. This was the worst episode. And I knew it within a second of being awake. As soon as my eyes opened and the sun came in through the window, I knew, at that moment that I would be better off being dead than to feel that bad. And I got locked in on the idea that I had to hurt myself. And I went to find some help. There's a counselor at the camp that I worked at. He was the counselor for the kids, but I went and found him because I needed somebody to talk to. And I couldn't find him. I found my boss, and he said, hold on, I'll be right back. But I couldn't be still. So I went out just behind the buildings at work, and we always had a knife on us because it was an outdoor setting, right? And I took my knife out, and I thought, yeah, this is the thing I need to do. This is the only way, like, this pain's going to leave. And That was the last thing I remember, was pressing this knife against my skin. And then this counselor had found me. He'd been looking for me and ran up from behind me and tackled me. And I woke up. Next thing I know, I don't remember a thing after that until I woke up some hours later in a psychiatric hospital. And I'd been committed there involuntarily, right? So I'm in a psychiatric hospital, and I remember when I woke up there, it was weird, man. My first thought wasn't like, oh my God, I need help, or, oh, thank God someone saved me. The first thought I had, Lachlan, was like, oh no, what if people find out? I was that set on not appearing weak or not appearing like I had some weakness or mental illness. My very first thought was, oh no, I don't want people to find out. And which is telling, right? Because that's kind of the whole story for me. And I think what so many people are dealing with now is just being open and vulnerable and honest about mental health, especially in the male community, or substance abuse. They're not things we comfortably talk about, right?
No, and even now the stigma has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, saying even now the stigma has, it has lessened, but I still don't believe that the individual, they might hear people talking, saying, yeah, go and talk and, open up. But I think the individual still feels that, and that fear of being vulnerable, opening up, discussing it, because you see it, I see it quite regular. I see posts of people saying, I'm always here, here's contact me. And there's all this activity, but then you're still hearing of male suicide rates going up and up and up. So I think there's still an issue with that, where the men, they might think it's all right for someone else to discuss it, but it's not okay for me to discuss it. So after that then, David, so, before we go any further, what was the relationships you had like with people? Did you have a girlfriend, relationships with your family? What were the relationships in general for you?
That's a great point. So at that point in time, I really wasn't close with my family at all. I had been, like I mentioned, like it was hard growing up in my house. There's no doubt about it. My dad was drinking a lot, and the temper he had, the way he interacted with us was very scary. And by the time I left for college, I really was pretty estranged. And certainly wasn't close with them emotionally, so I wasn't really having conversations with them. I did have a girlfriend, and she is the most important person in this whole story. I did have a girlfriend, and I had met her where I was working. So she met me when I started there, when I was doing okay, but she was with me for that year or so as my mood started to change a lot. And she was the first person I saw in the hospital, and that was really hard for her to come visit me there, because I'm thinking like, oh, she's gonna think I'm insane, right? She's gonna think I'm completely fucked up. And she was the first person I saw, and I was like, but she was understanding, and I couldn't really talk. Like, they had me on so many medications there that I couldn't really, understand what was going on. I just knew that, I was there and they were diagnosing me, and but I didn't really have a sense of feeling about it. I was just so numb from what they were giving me. So I couldn't really talk to her when she came to visit, but she sat next to me, she held me, she just let me know that she was there and that everything was going to be okay. So when I was there, that's where they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. They're like, what you've been experiencing is bipolar disorder. It's alternating phases of mania and depression. And there's part of me was like, oh, great. There's a name for this, right? Like it's a thing that people have. It's not just me completely on my own, losing my mind out there. But on the other hand, I was like, I didn't feel that stigma you mentioned. I didn't want to feel associated with a mental illness or a disorder. I'm like, no, like I'm stronger than that. I can punch through that. I can run through this wall, whatever it is. And so I didn't really want to believe it. So when I left there, I had an understanding that I had this disorder, and they medicated me. I had a mood stabilizer, and I had antidepressants, and I had an antipsychotic, and I took my pills. I did what I was told on that front, but I didn't tell anybody. My girlfriend knew, and that was pretty much it. And but I continued to, the one thing they told me, and I remember, was like, look, drugs and alcohol, for one, they're really not good with these medications you're taking. Two, it's really not recommended for people with bipolar disorder to abuse drugs and alcohol. Like, it can really throw you off. It can trigger episodes. It can make bad very, very, make it worse.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that at all. And I kind of just fell back into the pattern of drinking to help medicate and feel better. And I got addicted to alcohol to the point where, I would be scared if I didn't have it nearby. I was scared about the idea of not having a drink around me. And for about 10 years, after we finished working there, we moved back to the Bay Area. And I just fell into drinking almost every night, and eventually every night, drinking by myself, drinking whenever I could, going to a restaurant. I'm not really having dinner with you. I've got a flask in my pocket, and I'm going to the bathroom to take extra drinks. Well, because we're just having wine, all right? I'm not getting drunk fast enough with you over dinner, so I got alcohol in my jacket pocket. And that's how I lived. That's how I navigated the world, was just finding a way to get as drunk as possible whenever I could. And I got into pills, and I got into, that
was the exact same, bro.
And you convince yourself. It's crazy what we can convince ourselves. I mean, of course my world was falling apart. Of course I was, failing at work. Of course I was putting my relationship in jeopardy. But you find a way to convince yourself that no, it's okay. Like, I've got this under control, or, alcohol is a companion that I couldn't leave. It'll be worse if I leave it. And we twist and turn our minds into believing whatever we got to do to maintain that addiction. And that's the craziest part about it is, we're too smart for our own good. And we can convince ourselves of fucking anything. So I'm in my mid to late 20s, and I'm continuing down this road. I got arrested a few times, almost always for. I tended to get violent. I tended to get aggressive. I always wound up in a confrontation, and when things got out of hand, I got arrested. Had to call my girlfriend to pick me up from jail the next morning. And that's not a call you want to make, man. That's not a call you ever want to make in your life, and I put her through that, not once, 3 times. And, we got to a point of, at this point I'm about 30, and almost 30. And I got to a point with her where, she was like, look, I love you, and I'm waiting, and I know that you're struggling with an illness, but I can't keep watching this up close anymore, right? I can't sit front row for this, because I don't know when you're coming. I don't know if you're coming home. I don't know if you're hurt out there. I don't know what's going on, and I can't watch this up close. So I had pretty much put us at the point of put her in a position where I was dragging her down with me, and I didn't blame her for not wanting to be around it anymore. So we were getting close to that point where she was gonna, I think, give up if I kept putting her in that spot. And then if something happened, man, so when you're drinking that much, you black out easily. It's not like, but it's different. It's not like blacking out the way we said it colloquially, as kids. It's when people say blackout, you remember something, you remember a place you went to, or you remember some fucking food, some piece of pizza you got, these little things, but it gets different when you're drinking that much. And it really feels almost like, the hard drive is just deleted. It feels like the pages are torn out. And I had one night where it was the first time I could not remember not a shred of anything, not a place, a sight, a sound, a person. And I woke up one morning and I had blood all over me, some blood on my face and my hair and my clothes. And I'm thinking like, fuck, man, like I got my ass kicked again, But then I'm starting to try to figure out like, okay, shit, like how did I get home? How did I even get here? And I start to realize like, man, like, I don't know. Maybe my car is here. And I start walking around the neighborhood looking for my car. And, I'm petrified because I'm thinking like, if I find this car, like I drove home, I drove drunk all the time, honestly, but this was different. This was putting myself out on the road in a position where I really hurt someone, and I'm terrified that that's what happened. I think this is my blood. I don't know what's going on. And I'm walking around the neighborhood and I find my fucking car. And, I'm like, my heart sank, right? Like I'm devastated that I put myself in a position where, I could really hurt someone, right? And I get to my car and there's blood on the door and inside, and I'm just praying that like it's mine, right? And that I hurt myself and only myself. So I'm run back inside and I'm looking online to see if there was like a hit and run or something reported. I mean, I really have no idea. And that day was different than all the other days where I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't kick my ass into understanding I needed to change something. That day was different because I thought for the first time, like, this is not about me, man. This is not about me. This is about me destroying someone else's life, right? This is about me dragging my girlfriend through this misery. This is about me hurting someone when I'm out there on the streets, reckless and drunk and violent, driving. And I had this thought at that moment, like, I'm done. And because if I don't kill myself, I'm going to take someone else with me, I'm going to hurt someone else or both. And my girlfriend, I called her and I'm just like, look, give me one more chance, like stick with me because I can't do this without you, but I promise I'm going to fix this. I'm going to change this. And she said, okay. And the next day she checked me into a chemical dependency recovery program at the hospital. I met with this counselor. Never met this woman in my life. And I told her what was going on with me for 20 minutes or so to kind of introduction. And she told me straight up, dude, she looked at me in the face and she said like, okay, you're not going to survive. If you keep going, you're going to die. She told me that straight up. Like, I had never met this woman, and all she knew was what she saw and heard in 20 minutes. And, and I knew she meant it. Like, it wasn't a thing, the thing she said to her patients. Like, I knew she meant it and I believed it. And she just said, look, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that you need to give yourself 30 days. You need to not drink for 30 days and you need to take care of yourself for 30 days. And that's it. And we'll go from there. And I don't know, there was something about it, something about her, something about the spot that I was in, something about my girlfriend being willing to keep helping me that I said, okay, I can do that, And 30 days isn't a long time, but when you drink that much and you're addicted to something, the idea of not having it for 30 days is pretty intense. And if you're not addicted, and you wonder why people can't do that. You wonder why just go 30 days? Why can't you do that? You're not strong enough, you're not tough enough, whatever. It's different. It's like a part of your body missing, not having that alcohol around. It's the one thing that makes you feel safe is having that alcohol. And 30 days is a long time. And the way I did it, and this is important because if I hadn't done this, I don't know what would have happened. But while I was feeling, while I had the drive and the purpose and the sense of intention around this, within 24 hours, I sent an email to like everybody I knew, all my friends, family, everyone that I could find, in Gmail. And I told them what was going on. I said, look, I know I have a problem and you know I have a problem. 2 days ago, I woke up with blood all over me and I'm afraid I'm going to hurt someone. I'm afraid I'm going to kill myself. I'm not going to have any alcohol in me for, the next month. And I don't know what's going to have to happen after that. But if there's anything you can do to help me, please do. And that was it. And the reason I did that was because you let yourself down so much. It's not like I had never thought that I was drinking too much, right? Every week I'm like, okay, let me cut back, let me moderate, let me do this, let me do that. But you just let yourself down again and again, right? But I'm like, I knew that if I could make a commitment and give people my word and make a bond, that I wasn't going to bail on them, because I've always been a good teammate. I've always been a good friend. And I've always been loyal. And I said, those are my strengths. I'm not being loyal to myself. I'm destroying myself, but I'm going to be loyal to my people. And that bond is what is going to make this happen. So I made this promise to everyone around me, and I just had this feeling I'm not going to let them down. I'm not going to say
what was the
one
response?
thing.
What was the response you got from the email?
I was scared when I hit send on that email. That's a crazy email to send. But within minutes, I'm staring at the screen like, oh shit, it's out there now. I got to back this up. And, within minutes, man, I got, my friends like, this is the best thing, it's the smartest thing. This is the most amazing thing that you could say. I'm here, whatever you need. Let's go to a movie. Let's go to a basketball game. Let's take a walk. And yeah, everybody came through with that. And it was one day at a time. I never really thought, if I had thought then, okay, that was the last drink I've ever had, I don't really know that would be possible. I just thought, I'm not going to have a drink today. And I did that again and again. And dude, that was 12 years ago.
Wow.
That was 12 years ago. For 12 years, I've been not having a drink for one day at a time.
And have you got any other type of support, like counseling, therapy, meetings, anything else like that?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's been a long road. I mean, the first thing for me was just, I had to stop drinking, right? Because when you're you can't treat a mental illness, you can't drink that much or use substances that much and also deal with taking care of mental health. It's not possible. So my next step was like, okay, I got to start going and seeing my psychiatrist. I got to actually regularly take my pills every day. I need to start to understand that I have bipolar disorder and that it needs, like anything else, any other medical, physiological condition, it needs certain steps to be taken, right? And that was, I still wasn't talking about that, but I was starting to go to see my psychiatrist. I found a therapist, and continued to, I went to meetings for the first, year or so. Ultimately, like, I didn't continue to do AA. That wasn't a big part of my life after the first year or so. But between my girlfriend and my friends, and starting to see counselor, our therapist, I started to get a lot better. But you know what the support was, though? The thing that kept me going was like, my life started to get better, right? So at first, it was just about saving my life. It was about survival. It really was. It was about just not losing everything I have, right? But then all of a sudden, like, I'm not drinking anymore, and I'm taking better care of my mind and what it needed. And all of a sudden, like, oh shit, I'm doing okay at work. You know, it wasn't like I did it to make a career move, but all of a sudden, like, I'm doing much better because I have access to my mind and my thoughts and my problem solving and my creativity. I had just been stifling them this whole time. And then with the relationship, it was like we met again for the first time, is how I put it. All of a sudden, the person that she connected with, the person that I was, that was there for her all those years ago, started to come back. And so it got a lot easier to take care of myself because what I was getting out of it was so rewarding. That was the support, was like all these positive things that I was seeing happen around me, just from being healthy, being sober, being present, having a conversation over let's go back to the conversation at dinner, like having a dinner conversation with my girlfriend where I'm actually looking her in the eyes and being an honest, true person, not someone hiding, waiting to get away from her so that I could, drink and feel better at that moment. And it was like we met again for the first time. And within a couple of years of that, we were married. Like one of the best days of my life. 2 years later, so we got married. And, that person who was getting calls from me in jail, seeing me in the psychiatric hospital, that's my wife today. That's my family. Wow. Like we have a kid. We have a baby boy. Right? That's 20 years later, just about. And that person standing with me, I know that I believe pretty deep down with a lot of conviction that if she had left, I don't think I'd be here. I don't believe that I would have survived.
No,
I'm pretty sure about that.
See, on that one, David, that it's exact same with my wife. If my wife would have left me, I wouldn't be here. I know that for sure, because she stuck by me. And this is what I was going to ask you. Did you ever believe that in yourself, that you were here for more, that you had more to give, that there was something deeper inside you, something greater inside you, that she could see, but you just couldn't see that?
Yeah. It took some time, but I did. So that's a great question, because that's what I'm doing here now, right? Like that's why we're talking, is because it's become clear to me that what I find truly fulfilling at this moment right now is like I want to find myself from 20 years ago. I want to find that guy, right? I want to find that younger version of you, of all the people that are struggling with alcoholism or addiction, that are suffering from depression or bipolar disorder or other mental illnesses that they're not getting help for, because I know that there is a much easier way than the path I took and probably the path you took. And I want people to be able to tap into their happiness, to their potential, and take care of themselves a lot sooner than I started to do, before it's too late. Because I could be dead. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Some of the situations that I put myself in, I am lucky to be alive. There's no doubt about it. And I'm like, well, why am I here? What am I doing here? Why was I so lucky? And why did I get so much grace from the world? And I believe it's for a lot of reasons, but one of the things I feel, responsible for is being there to try to help others who are in the same spot. There's a lot of people. 1 in 5 people, 20% of this fucking population suffers from at least a moderate mental illness or disorder. All right, that's a lot of people, and it's normal, but people don't talk about it, and people don't get help, especially young men.
Well, my brother David was 25, and he was diagnosed with bipolar, and unfortunate, it was a little bit too late, because he died from an overdose, and that was 6.5 years ago. He's a young guy, and they took it. He was 24 when he got diagnosed,
Wow.
and he had a lot of behavioural problems. And he came from a great family. They had, because my parents divorced, so he was my stepbrother. But he was like, I've been with him since he was like a baby, and he had behavioural problems, and nobody identified it. And he got into addiction. He'd been at rehab a few times, and there was nobody said this is what you've got. And then he got diagnosed with bipolar, but within a few months he'd relapsed and died. And it was, in my opinion, it was too late. The diagnosis was far too late. And you're right. It's the mental health. Everybody will know someone or is directly impacted by some form of mental health, and this is why I also believe what you're saying is you are here for a greater purpose, because everything that you've went through has been lived experience. You're not talking from a textbook. You're not talking from something you've read or watched on a podcast. You're talking through lived experience. And everything that you've went through has gave you a set of tools that somebody who's going through that will trust you and identify with you, because they're like, this guy has lived it. I'm going to listen to him. I'm going to take what he's got to say serious, because over the years, like, I've been to 3 different rehabs, countless prisons, and they used to send people to talk to me who had never experienced anything in their life. They'd read it in a book, and then they tried to talk to me on a level where to relate, and it was nothing against them. They were just doing their job, but I had no trust in them, because they couldn't understand what I was going through, because they had never experienced it. They might have seen it from a distance, but unless you've lived that, I don't think you can really truly understand the pain that somebody goes through. Like when you were saying earlier, drinking with a flask, that was me all the time. I couldn't leave my house without alcohol. My wife, 2 bin bags, when she went through my pockets, in my cupboard, inside pockets, half bottles of vodka, this, that, they were stashed everywhere, because I just couldn't deal with it. And that's what you're saying is, you're here to help. And I believe that there is people like you and myself who are here for a purpose of helping the younger generation to have an easier road, to soothe that pain, and they don't have to go through what you've went through. Your story is of the mania and the depression. Did they settle, or did you have to find a coping mechanism for them?
Coping mechanisms are, yeah, that was the name of the game, man. I had to replace, alcohol, with something. So I, those hours that I was drinking, of 7 p.m., midnight, 2 a.m., these times of the day, these times of the week that I was so trained to give myself that medicine, it was really hard. I went to the gym a lot. I went to the gym feverishly, not a lot. I went to the gym constantly, and I would particularly go at night, because that was a time that I needed to fill. And I had this there was a 24-hour gym, not too far from where we lived, and it was a surprising amount of people there in the middle of the night, man. It was weird. I wasn't in there alone, and I always wondered. I had this crew that I played basketball with. We would play basketball at 1 a.m, and I always wondered about these guys, if they were, we didn't know each other outside of the gym. That was just this place where we connected and we shared this thing. And I always wondered about them. Like, I wonder what they were doing there. Maybe they had their own, similar obstacles or demons that they were getting away from and doing something healthier. Or maybe they just have weird schedules. I don't know. But I bet some of them were there for some kind of similar reason. So I spent a lot of time at the gym. That was always a big part of my life, I love sports as a kid. I rode crew when I was in college. I always did something competitive and physical. So it's like I already had that in hand. I already had something that I knew would give me a positive feeling, which was really helpful. So it's like, I know, okay, I can lean on this a little bit. So I worked out a ton. I watched a shitload of movies, man. I watched every fucking movie, the bad ones, the awful ones. I watched every movie I could. Every weekend I would go to see 2 movies in the theater. Every weekend, no matter what. And yeah, that was a big part of it. And then the other thing that was kind of sort of a coping skill, but going back to like, so the reinvention piece, right? Your whole thesis, your theme, right? So I said I started to do better at work, and about 2 years in, I just, partly because I was younger and I had just the energy, I guess, and I was feeling I was on a roll. I was feeling like things were going up and up and up. The more I took care of myself, the more I could give, the more I could perform, the more I could produce at work and in my relationships. And I just had this idea, like, you know what? Because I was in real estate at the time, and I was doing a terrible job. I had been doing shitty, barely scraping enough money together to pay the bills. I got some part-time jobs just to stay afloat during all this. My credit cards were completely maxed out. But I started to do better, and all of a sudden I'm getting deals done. I'm getting work done. And I just had this idea, like, fuck it. Like, let me start a company. I was 30, 32, 31, 32. And I had just closed a big deal, sold a building, had a nice check. And I was like, screw it. Let me rent it. I'm going to get an office sublease. I shared an office with some dude and get a computer. I got a couple clients that are going to come with me. And we'll see what happens. I didn't have as much to lose, and I was feeling so joyful and happy to be alive and to be sober and to be on this pathway to reinventing and taking care of myself. And so I just gave it a shot. And like, we had 2 clients, and then we had 4, and I was busting my ass for them because I didn't have a big book of business, right? So you got to go all out for what you got. And we just started. Then I got a part-time employee, and then all of a sudden I had a team, and we're in like year 12 of this company now, and that's success, and like that forward momentum, that was part of the coping skill too. Was like, because I wasn't just punching in, punching out every day, trying to stay away from alcohol and stay afloat. It was like, no, I wanted more. I was reaching and grabbing and clawing for more because I was so excited and feeling so grateful to be fucking alive and able to do these things. And we have so much potential. We have so much ability and capacity and creativity and ingenuity, but we get in the way of it, and I don't mean just like, yeah, I was operating at 10% of my capacity, but even people where there's not a problem that's that obvious, are we really taking care of ourselves every day as young people, old people, whatever? Are we doing the things that allow us to be at 100% of our potential? Because 100% of the human potential is a fucking lot. Like, we can do great things. We can start companies. We can make music. We can make film. We can achieve all kinds of things. But it takes us being at our best. And like, if you have a mental health issue, if you have a physiological issue, and you're not taking care of it, you've got handcuffs on. You're carrying around an extra weight. And we don't let ourselves believe this, but it is getting in our way. We take alcohol and drugs, like we use them on a regular basis, and we believe that it's not the reason things aren't going right, but you take that away all of a sudden, and I don't judge anybody for doing anything, man. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with drinking, but the reality is, if you have a habit, if you have an addiction, there's a lot of your energy is going to that. A lot of your mind and your body the energy you have is consumed dealing with that. And when you remove that from the equation, it's like you have that energy back. You have that thoughtfulness back, and all of a sudden you're able to set goals come up with new ideas, do things that you didn't think were possible. So that kind of became the coping skill, was like, let me grow this business and let me keep, we're in real estate. And so when I started, we were doing office and retail, like leasing and managing these buildings. And, as we started to grow, we started to invest in buildings, buy buildings, manage buildings for other people, bigger and bigger ones. And so I got kind of hooked, right? I got addicted to that success, and being able to be the best in the business and the best in the area and perform our job at the highest level became the new thing I was kind of hooked on. And it's a healthy thing to be hooked on. We're able to, right now, 11 years in, we own a dozen or so buildings. We have about 2,500 units, apartments that we manage, 1 million square feet of office buildings that we manage. And that's a lot of people that we're able to take care of. We have probably 10,000 residents combined. And we do our very best to provide them with, we treat them with as much grace and care and conscientiousness as we can. And I know that what my company is doing is playing a big part in, being a positive force in people's lives. They get to come home every day and know that, like, there's a really solid, strong, conscientious company making sure that that they're taking care of whatever their housing needs. And it's a really fulfilling thing, so there's my coping skill right now, is growing this business. We have a big team, and the company plays a big part in their lives and their livelihoods and their professional development. So right now, I'm doing good, but a few years ago, I was like, okay, I'm glad I'm having this success and we're going to keep this thing going. But I don't just want to put like everything I went through. I don't just want to like put that in the rearview mirror and tuck it away, because what I've learned and the awful shit that I went through, other people are going through it too. And if there's any chance that I could help one person make it easier than I did, I want to do all the work I can for that. And so what I started to do was, I started to write, with the idea that, at first I was just journaling, right? Just to get things off my mind. But then eventually it turned into this idea that I could write a book about my experiences and what I've learned that could eventually, help somebody out who's in a similar spot to I was. And then that led into having conversations like this, creating a public platform where, hopefully there's someone out there, someone's going to listen to this podcast and the words that you and I are exchanging right now. And it's going to be at a pivotal moment in their life. And the idea of that happening, the idea of that person saying like, oh man, these two guys, they were fucking down and out. They've been through it. And a reinvention happened and they rose up from that. If our conversation can help just plant that seed in one person's life, let alone more, that will be one of the most rewarding experiences I can have. And so as I continue to go forward with my professional work and my family life, I also want to make sure that I do everything I can to help other people get to the same spot that I'm at. Whatever it is, doesn't need to be they're starting a business or whatever, but fulfilling a goal, their dream, they're seeing their ideas through. I want them to get to that spot.
Yeah, that's amazing. And your book's coming out. It's coming up for air. Is it this year your book's going to come out?
My hope is that it's published by the end of the year and available on. That's the plan. Available on Amazon and whatever else. I've got a website where I'm keeping everybody posted on that, and I'm sure we'll do all that at the end, and I'll give you my website links and everything for everyone. But I wrote a book, and I plan on having it out in the fourth quarter. And every day, every day or two, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn, putting small pieces, putting small ideas out there, trying to give just a daily drip of inspiration or motivation for someone that is really struggling with mental health, and or battling addiction. And so often those two things are connected. The story you said earlier, which is tragic, by the way, but he had a mental illness and he treated it and he self-medicated it. And so often that happens because if you have a mental illness, it's hard to come to terms with it. It's hard to be vulnerable and talk to people about it, right? And that means it's hard to get treatment. And if you're not getting treatment, you find ways to treat yourself. And it's kind of simple that way. I mean, it's complex and it's huge, but it's ultimately kind of simple. If we're not vulnerable, we can't talk. And if we don't talk, then we can't get help. And if we can't get help, we find the wrong ways to help ourselves, and that's self-medication. So that chain of shit that happens because we're not just talking about it, that's why there's such a correlation with mental illness and substance abuse, and that's called dual diagnosis. And it's tragic, but it's also like it makes so much sense,
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's the drugs and the alcohol. It works at the beginning until it doesn't work. And that's what I found at the beginning for many years, that it would numb the pain, but at the end it was just destroying everything around me. It was destroying my family. It was destroying my health, my career. It was destroying everything. So and I grew up in an era where we were told not to show the emotions. Big boys don't cry. And it's trying to now speak to the younger generation. Like, I've got two young children. I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. My son's nearly 8. And I openly speak to them about addiction. Like, for example, we were at a party and a woman came up to the table and asked if I wanted a drink. And my son, at the time he was 6, he says, "No, my daddy doesn't drink alcohol. He's allergic to it." And it's just dropping these from as long as my children could understand. They've known about addiction. They've known about me being an alcoholic, but they also, when it comes to emotions, I tell them to feel them, to freely express them and don't suppress them. Just open up and be that safe container for them to come to me with anything, and there's no judgment, there's no criticism, there's nothing, because I think it's important that the future generation understand that it's okay to talk about this. It's okay to come and be open, and they're not alone. They don't, like my son's going through a difficult time right now where he's understanding mortality. He's getting to an age where he knows that we're going to die now, and he's having all these horrible thoughts. And he keeps saying to me every day, "Daddy, I'm having a bad thought." And I say, "Well, let's speak about it," and try to get him to understand that these thoughts aren't his. They're not his thoughts. He's not consciously thinking them. He's the one who observes the thoughts. But as a young child, they don't understand that. So, and that's my whole mission, is to raise awareness for the future generation, for my children and theirs. And it's very much like what you're doing as well. And you're going to have such a massive reach, because I think as we go on, mental health, especially bipolar, I had never really heard of until my brother got diagnosed. I'd never heard of it. And you're hearing a lot more people are coming out and discussing it. But, for me to be, at the time, I think I was 40, maybe 38, and I'd never heard of it before. And I didn't know what it was. So this is, just another mental health that's been swept under the carpet for many years, or people have been too scared to talk about it. And, what kind of advice would you give yourself, your younger self? If you were to go back and give your younger self advice when these episodes started happening, what would you say?
Yeah. Oh man, I think about that all the time. I think I would tell my younger self that it doesn't have to be this hard. You don't have to go through it the way that you did. Um, and it starts with being vulnerable. It really does. And that word is, it's thrown around and used in a lot of ways. But, I mentioned back at the beginning, right, when I was talking about those like early signs of I didn't know what it was, but those early signs of bipolar disorder and these mood swings that were happening and these thoughts that were in my mind that I didn't know they didn't make sense. At that point in time, if I had been open and if I had talked to people and not been scared of judgment or seeming like it was a weak thing or not the kind of thing that a man would fucking deal with, whatever that bullshit means.
Yeah.
I could have saved myself and people around me a lot of pain, and I'm lucky to be alive. It could have been worse, but if I had talked to people sooner and not and understood the meaning of strength, I thought that okay, I could punch my way through this. I can run through this. I can like squeeze this with my hands into submission. That's a misunderstanding of what strength is, and the strength at that moment that I would try to compel my younger self to embrace is the strength to be vulnerable and the strength to communicate and to be open about what's going on, and not worry about judgment and let the stigma just evaporate for the sake of bettering myself. I mean, I spent 10 years deteriorating because I didn't take the right steps to take care of myself. That's insane. Of all the times I thought I was insane, that was the insane thing, was doing everything I could to avoid taking a look in the mirror and really thinking about what do I need to do to take care of myself so that I can be a force of good to the people around me. And I would tell my younger self, don't make it this hard. Be vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that's all you need, isn't it? You just need that support, because that's what you said, their strength. And I think is it Jordan Peterson that says it's about courage. It's not, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's having fear and taking the action anyway. And that's what it is. We're all going to be scared. But would you want to live 10 years like you did, which you were dragging yourself down with, torture, putting yourself through horrific events? Like when you spoke about blacking out, I remember a very similar story. I woke up, went outside, my car wasn't there, and I went searching for it, and I was blacked out, and I found it about a mile, smashed into the side of a bin, like one of these big green bins, and it's the fear is horrendous. The anxiety, and I actually left the state when that happened because I was so scared that I'd done something, and it was horrific. But that's what people struggle with every day, and if they can just have the strength to say, put their hand up and say, listen, I'm experiencing this right now, can you, because there's plenty of people out there who want to help. You want to help, I want to help, and we're just a small, couple out of thousands of people who would love to be able to have the opportunity to help. And I think that's what's important to put across, is that we want to help. It's not a burden on us. We're saying, we are here. We have some solutions for you. Put your hand up and we will give you the wisdom that we have learned through experience, and just take a chance, and I think that's what you're saying is just, it's exactly spot on. That's what people need to hear, but now that you're this big successful businessman, that is just a prime example of how life can change when you take the right action, because you've obviously always had that intelligence, and you've had the capability to be a successful businessman, a partner, a father. You've always had that in you, but you must have doubted that the alcohol and the abuse on yourself would have caused you to doubt yourself for all those years. And as soon as you've removed that, your life is just, because took off to astronomical heights. And if that's not a proof of, you know, a story of reinvention, then I don't know what is. You know, I don't know what is. There's so many people out there thinking they don't have the ability, they don't have it in them. And you're just an example to say you do have it in you. You know, take the opportunity and get yourself clean and sober. You know?
I mean, I can tell you there was no way I thought I would ever be in the place that I'm at right now. It wasn't even a dream, you know. It was just a no thought. It never was possible. I thought I could get better. I thought I could like have a healthy life, but the idea that I'd run a business, have a community, professional and personal community around me like the one I do, you know, I would have never thought that possible. But honestly, my advice would be, yeah, I mean, in that process of reinvention, it was critical for me to like set goals. Okay, it's like I'm gonna do, you know, start a company, right? That's a big goal, but I tried not to think about it too big, right? I wasn't like, okay, my goal is to make a company with 10 million in revenue. Day one, that's the goal. Sure, that's a target, right? But like that's not a very good goal, at least in the way that I take it, because it takes a long time to get there, and that looming over your head every day can be discouraging. So instead of like, okay, I'm gonna have a company that's X size, instead of that, it's okay, I want to run a successful business that one day could, you know, maybe reach those kinds of levels. What do I need to do today, just today, to get there? What are the things that business owner would do just today? And then I just worry about that, and then punch in, you know, get it done and go home, and know that I made sure to challenge myself every day to stay in line with that goal. And if you do that for 10 years, and if you set a goal and you work at it on a day by day basis for 10 years, that's great. Then you don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm not big enough, or, oh, we're not, you know, large enough, or we don't make enough money yet. It's like, no, the goal is to run the best company you can, have some targets that are out there. Sure. Think of some other companies as good examples, you know, of what you're trying to do. But the goal, the success, is just the day-to-day journey of it, and not thinking about making it too big. Just saying, okay, what are the things I would do today that'll help me inch my way farther along? And like, that's success to me, is just doing everything you can today that's hard, that's courageous, that's challenging, that chips away at your bigger goals. And like drinking too. I mean, if I was like, okay, Lachlan, here's the deal. You're going to not drink for 10 years. Day one, that's your goal, 10 years. Maybe you do it, but maybe you don't. I mean, that's a lofty goal. And a better way to approach that is, okay, well, the kind of person that doesn't drink for 10 years, what does he need to do today to make that happen? But just today, and that's it. Yeah. And I just think, and I thought about it that way. That's why it was a 30-day goal. 30 days turned into 6 months, turned into a year, turned into 5 years, turned into 10. But it was really just about today. You know, that whatever you want to be in 10 years, it requires that all you have to worry about is today. And it just requires you to focus on today for a long time, sure. But it doesn't need to be that daunting. It can just be an approach to waking up every day saying, okay, what are the 5 things I got to do today that are going to help move my business forward? That's it. Yeah. Make a plan, do those 5 things, and go to bed. You know, and that do that shit for 10 years, and like you're going to like what you see at the end of it, you know?
Yeah, and I love that. It's amazing advice, and you know, that's what it is. It's just do the next obvious action, you know, on a consistent basis. And that's what they say. All those small incremental changes lead to big, massive results, you know. So it's and exactly what you're saying, you know, focus on today. I think that's probably the best advice that I've heard in a long time, because when you get these bigger goals, you might get overwhelmed. But if you focus on today, that is, all where your focus is. You don't have to. You're not in anxiety. You're not in fear. You're just in the present moment, saying, "Right, I'm taking care of business right now, today." Boom. So, listen, David, is there anything that that you would like to speak about or talk about that we haven't discussed? That you want to get out there?
Man, we've covered so much, amazing, um, conversation, and gotten in deep. I guess I would just kind of say what I said earlier, and remind people, um, it might not look like there's a chance. It might not look like there's a pathway out of what you're feeling. And if you are struggling with depression or another mental illness, or you're struggling with addiction, it might just seem impossible to create a world that where you are healthy and of sound mind and body, and taking care of yourself and building the life you want. It just might not seem possible, and it didn't seem possible for me. But there is a pathway to it, and that pathway is just, okay, what do I got to do today to create that life for myself later? What are the things I got to do today so that maybe down the road I can build that life that I imagine? And that's it. And I would remind people to think about it that way, because I mean, I'm lucky that some of the things changed, when they did for me. I was relatively young, but it doesn't matter. Like, you could be 40, 50, 60, and you can make the change that you want to make, right? There's a lot of people who, I mentioned my dad earlier. Let me give a shout out to him. Like, he was still drinking heavily all through my childhood, and he stopped drinking when I was 16. And so he's at that time was in his early 50s. And he had
Wow.
already missed my childhood and my sister's childhoods. He was there, but he wasn't really there.
Yeah.
And he could have said, well, fuck it. I've already messed this up. My family's not, it's not the life I wanted for my family. I'm not as far in my career as I should be. I'm done. It's just going to be me in the bottle from now on. And he could have done that, but he stopped drinking when I was 16. It's been 25, 30 years for him, and he reinvented his life. And
Wow.
he is healthy. He's 80 now, and he looks, he does fucking yoga every day. He looks fit. He looks healthy. He's an amazing grandfather, right? Like, the light in his eyes that I see when he picks up my 18-month baby boy, it's special for me to watch, because I know that he had a hard, long road to get himself in a position where he could do that, and
Yeah.
he didn't have that opportunity. He didn't give himself that opportunity when we were kids as much as he should have. All right. He took that away from himself. It was his fault. It was his doing, but he took that away from himself. But 50 and older, like, he turned his life around. So it's really never too late. It doesn't matter.
No.
Like, oh, well, I missed my chance. I'm too old to start a new career. I'm too old to get my shit together and get healthy. Like, absolutely not. I mean, his career blew up in his 50s. That's when he started to get really going. And his grandkids love him. I mean, my little baby boy loves him, and he has two. My sister's kids just adore him, and because he's not the person that he was 30 years ago, and he made that happen. So I guess that, to answer your question of like what else, last thing to say, it's really never too late either. You don't need to be young to make these changes. You can do it at any point you want.
Yeah, I love that, bro, because that is so important, because we all still have life to live. And, if somebody stops at 50, they still have 30, 40 years left, to create another life, so amazing.
Totally.
Well, and it's well done to your dad, for doing that, because, that's an accomplishment. And, he's got to have really, battled to get to that place. And now he's looking back thinking, I never wasted all my life. I'm actually so grateful for the years that I did have, which is a blessing, because a lot of men, women don't make that, choice. And unfortunately, they die with the bottle in the hand. So, listen, brother, I just want to thank you for giving me your time today. And I'm going to put your links in the description, and I'll be following your journey from from over in Scotland, and I'll look forward to the book coming out. And also, if there's anything I can do to help you, or anything at all, you just let me know, and I'll be happy to help.
Appreciate it.